Stare at the dark too long, and you will eventually see what isn't there.
2 years ago, I was staying at my boyfriend's parents' house for Christmas. They own a pub and have tiny guest houses. We stayed in one overnight. I was completely sober and was not sleeping or experiencing sleep paralysis. We'll change my boyfriend's name for this to Dan. It was around 3 a.m, and my boyfriend was downstairs chilling out. I had a lamp on next to me in bed, and I was set up on my phone. I look up and see a dark figure wearing a hat, 1940s style fedora type shape, gliding up the stairs. At first I was confused, thinking, why is Dan putting on old-fashioned clothes? I watched as this figure glides up the stairs slowly. The movement was unnatural, and I never heard any footsteps. The figure is standing in the middle, staring at me. He has no facial figures or even eyes, but I can feel him staring right at me. It was blacker than black, a dense shadow, and he was very tall, must have been over 6 feet. The shadow was wearing a trench coat and fedora. Definitely not from this era, more like the 40s or 50s. I felt an immediate negative energy in the room. In my panic and confusion, I call out to it, almost hoping it's my boyfriend, even though deep down, it obviously isn't even human. I say something like, "Dan, what are you doing? Where did you get that hat and coat? You're creeping me out." My boyfriend then calls out from downstairs, "What? You alright?" My heart drops as I'm still staring at this shadow man, trying to understand what I'm seeing. I'm terrified, and it feels like this entity, whatever you want to call it, was feeding off my fear, like it felt sinister. I close my eyes, expecting there to be nothing there when I open them. My eyes open, and the shadow man is at the foot of the bed, staring me down. I can't put into words the dread and pure terror I felt. I go old school and hide under the covers. A few seconds later, I come out from the covers and, oh my god, the figure was towering over me on the bed, practically on top of me. All I can do at this point is just close my eyes and pretend it's not happening. I open my eyes again. The shadow man is about 2 inches from my face. I hid under the covers all night and didn't open my eyes again. It was terrifying. It had the appearance of a human, but no eyes, no mouth, no facial features at all. But I could feel it looking right into me so intensely. 6 months later, I type in Shadow Man with hat and stumble into the online forum, the Hatman Project, and read hundreds of stories that are all weirdly similar to my experience, and it blows my mind. Is this merely something created from the mind, or some entity? Is this Shadow Man traveling across parallel universes or timelines? So many possibilities. Now, I don't believe in ghosts. Sorry all of you that do, but I don't. I believe in bad energy and aliens and trans-dimensional beings, but I do believe in shadow people. Why? Because I've seen them. In Wikipedia it states that they have red glowing eyes, but I've never seen that. I've just seen a shadow in the form of a human, move just like a human. So one of the first times I can remember seeing a shadow person was when I was in the 5th grade. I went to a pretty exclusive private school, so we took a lot of field trips. One trip I'll never forget was when we went to the dunes of Michigan in the middle of the winter. I don't know whose bright idea this was, but it was like a deserted summer camp basically. One of the counselors did teach us about crunching wintergreen lifesavers in the dark, and you could see sparks, so that was pretty cool. He did it in the woods, so it was pretty neat to see as a 5th grader. The camp was covered with snow, and as I said, was probably rocking during the summer, but at winter, eating in a dining hall made for 6 times as many children and a skeleton crew of staff was a little haunting. The place was kinda old too. The buildings were definitely mid-early 20th century and creaked and groaned, and were probably the shit when they were made, but just were old and had that smell of thousands of stinky kids going in and out of them through the years. Our counselor wasn't one of our teachers. It was a real counselor from the camp. At night, we had to sleep in a cabin that was segregated, boys from the girls. The counselor was actually a cool guy and probably smoked grass, and never had a desk job in his life, so we liked him. When he assigned us our bunk beds, I was against the wall, on the back right side of the cabin, top bunk. There were 2 rows of bunk beds, probably 6 to a side. I was pretty stoked about having top bunk and having the wall next to me. Although the counselor was by the door in the front of the cabin, of course. This was the 80s, so no second door fire escape. He slept on the left side bottom bunk, which made sense being by the door and at ground level. Now this place was really far north in Michigan, at the top of the index finger of the mitten shape of the state, and it was really quiet and really dark. When the counselor turned off the cabin lights, there was nearly no light. The only light was from an outbuilding about 50 yards away, a typical sodium outdoor bulb. So us boys settled down, and I felt a little restless, and I couldn't really sleep that great. I wasn't sure if I even fell asleep or not, but I looked towards the door and there it was, a shadow person. The shadow person was probably 7 feet tall because when he started walking, he had to bend down every time he looked down at a boy. It was like he was checking on them, moving one bunk to the next side, to the side bottom bunk, then top bunk. I obviously couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was totally petrified. The shadow person was moving at a leisurely rate, not fast but not slow, and only really paying attention to the boy whose bed he was checking out. As it got closer, I had a better look at it. It wasn't really detailed, it was sort of static or fuzzy on the edges of its shape. Ridiculous as it may sound, it kinda looked like a stick figure, but all black as night. I could only make it out because of the light coming through the front 2 windows of the cabin, with the residual light from the outbuilding. As it creeped closer and closer to my bed, I was really paralyzed. I felt like I couldn't say or move anything, even though I wanted to. Another odd thing was that it was though someone turned down the volume, because before you could hear the kids tossing and turning, but it was near silent now. As stated, I was the last bed on the right side top bunk. Shadow Man made it to the top bunk next to mine in what seemed like an eternity, but his movements really weren't that slow, just normal speed. Until this point, everything was on the rails, checking one bed to the next, so maybe I could have explained it away, but as he checked the top second to last bunk next to mine, he abruptly looked my way. The way he was moving, he should have gone to the left side second to last bunk to be uniform, but instead, it tilted its head towards me. It kinda cocked its head like dogs do when they are confused by something. Then it inched closer and closer at a much slower pace, like it was sneaking up on me. I assure you, my eyes were wide open. I was clinging to my itchy baby blue wool blanket and sheet and had them yanked up past my nose so only my eyes and the top of my head were out. Then, the Shadow Man's face got closer and closer to mine, and there was honestly nothing to make out. It was just an empty void of space, shaped like a person, but as its head got closer, I couldn't see its body any longer. Closer and closer, and there was a slight chill. Not a huge one, but just like 10 degrees colder. At this point, my heart was racing. I couldn't make sense of anything and didn't know why nobody else was experiencing this. It was like I fell between the cracks and was seeing something I shouldn't. The blackness of his head totally engulfed me, and in what seemed like an instant, it was morning and light outside, and everyone was waking up. When I referred to this story a few times since, I called him the Sandman because it was like an entity that was making sure that we were all asleep, and he caught me awake and knocked me out. Weird, but true. I was young, 24 now, but around 10 or so possibly. It was a normal day, normal night of being scared of the dark, and all of a sudden, I look up and there's this big shadow staring down at me. Huge, at least 8 foot. Big top hat / bowler hat. White pits for eyes looking down on me. I can feel that my eyes are shut, but I can't open them. I feel like I'm being controlled and forced to stay asleep while knowing that I'm asleep. It was one hell of a trippy ass experience. I wasn't scared, not that I recall. All of a sudden this fucker is pulling me up by my fingers. After I get to 55 degrees or so, I jolt awake. Hatman is nowhere to be seen and I'm falling on my ass in bed. No way in hell I could have been sitting down or lifted myself up like that. It's worth noting that every time I suffer from sleep paralysis, I get the overwhelming fear and shivers, but this first time, I don't remember suffering from those symptoms. Nothing happens for a little while, until biology in high school. I'm sitting there, not really caring, until my head involuntarily slams against the table, and I can't wake up. I know I'm asleep, but my eyes weren't open. It was like that for 5 minutes until my buddy shook me out of it. This is where you need to strap yourself in, because this is when the shadow figures started showing themselves in the open. It's 11 PM, no job yet, after graduation, and I'm dicking around on my PC. I want a drink or whatever, and I have to keep the front door unlocked so my uncle can come in once he gets home from college. I walk by the basement door, and I hear children giggling in my basement. I froze. My eyes darted across the front door window, and there was something leaning sideways, with its head near the top of the window looking in. As quickly as I laid eyes on him, he vanished to my left. I ran to my room, grabbed my handgun, and checked the front porch. Absolutely nothing. Fast forward, basically my best friend at the time lived literally a 45-second walk around the corner. While walking home one day late, around 12 AM or so, I saw a man with a baseball cap leaning against the corner house's porch. He disappeared when tree limbs broke my steady vision. A little bit after this, I was playing Manhunt in the odd projects 1 minute away from my house. I was running through the dark part, past some trees. Another one of my friends was chasing me until I realized it was my friend. I turned around long enough to see a cloud of black disappear behind me as I hit the edge of the street light. I nearly tripped and slammed my face first into the street when I processed what just happened. Around half an hour later, I see a small figure moving through the fields in the game boundaries we all agreed on. I assume this is my friend A from the group, but then I see another large shape in the woods loping after him. I thought this was my other friend D, who's larger than us, but the only one who came out of that side of the woods was A. We made sure to check all avenues, and we even all went to the projects to check. Nothing. Got my first legal job at Walmart as sanitary maintenance on the graveyard shift as part of a skeleton crew. This is where my mental health saw a serious decline. My ex came back into my life, and I let her mess me up and just pretty much destroy my mind entirely. While all this was happening, my insomnia and sleep paralysis showed a slight increase. After I left her, I met an amazing woman who also worked at the same store, and we've been together for 3 years and engaged for 2. Fast forward a few months, I get to see Seether live thanks to my fiance with tickets that she bought 3 months into our relationship. That's when I start spending the night at her house, and I thought I was safe there. Every time I've encountered sleep paralysis there, which is around 4 or 5 times because I usually have it every 1 or 2 months, her bedroom door decided that my hallucination would pivot in the middle, like someone could grab either top end or bottom and just spin it around infinitely. There would be a shadow man peering in, leering at me. Solid black outline with an even darker than black fill for the figure. I quit my job due to many reasons, one of which was getting bullied by management and the other was my mental health, which is only getting worse. I found a new job as a custodian at a local elementary school. I was a split custodian, but now I work in one building, which was one of the oldest schools in the county, and 5 minutes away from my house. The reason we're not called janitors is because we're technically security as well as sanitation. It used to be segregated, and let me tell you about this godforsaken building that was built close to 100 years before. The third wing of the school is absolutely riddled with some sort of entity. I can't stand being down there on my own, starting at 9:30 p.m. All we have encountered is auditory things, like doors slamming, and I've had doors slam right behind me, and the basement is something else entirely. I've also had sleep paralysis at this job. While I was sleeping on the couch in the lounge on lunch, that's when I had it. You walk into the break room, the bathroom door is straight ahead. 2 6x6 tables and 8 chairs in the center of the room. A table with a love seat directly to my left, and against the far wall is a beach mural and a couch under that. Fridge is to the left when you sit on the couch, and the microwave is next to that, in between both the couch and the refrigerator. I crashed on the couch for not even 5 minutes when I'm jolted awake and couldn't move. It was sleep paralysis again. By this point, I would just shut my eyes and try move, until I heard the demon bellowing in the hallway outside of the room with footsteps making vibrations that made a volcanic eruption feel like a kiddie coaster at Hershey Park. I eventually woke up and sat there for a minute until I realized I was still sleeping and dreaming my co-workers had come back into the room without faces. When I had actually woken up, I was sweating and terrified. I didn't sleep until 5 a.m. in the morning and I got off at 11 p.m. 3 days before, one of my co-workers quit. He told me he heard whispers in the basement, said he'd never go back down there on his own. I don't blame him because I've felt like something is down there in the past. You guessed it, at 9:30 p.m. Right now, the building is going through an HVAC remod, and the demo crews and installations leave at around 2:30 p.m. If I go down there on my security check past 3 p.m, I can hear talking and knocking. I can't hear exact words, but I know someone is speaking. When I go down to check, nothing. I know what you're thinking. OP, it's someone else in the building and the voice is traveling through the pipes. No, it isn't, because they've ripped all the piping out and are just now shoving new shit in. And even if it was someone else, they shouldn't be down there with me. That's all I can remember right this second. I don't know if the Hatman gave me some sort of fucked up gift to see shadow people with the curse of sleep paralysis, or if I'm just stupid. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. If you liked that video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already. A huge thank you to all the Reddit users who allowed me to use their stories. A link to each story will be in the description below. If you have a story you'd like to share on my channel, please send it to my email, which is also in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for your continued support. I really do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.